This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson.
You sure that's not Kirk Herbstreit down there?
This is Bowden, who is way better looking than Ben and way better behaved.
Who's Ben?
Shots fired. Let's go.
Ben Herbstreit's dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's I've seen Bowden before. When you and Danny did your darts only. I mean, when you and Dusty did your darts only viral video, you know.
Yeah.
Bowden's
made it.
Bowden nearly tore Danny's ACL.
Yeah, Bowden was out in pursuit.
We just took a little walk. Might have cleaned up some stuff, you know.
There you go.
Oh, and you got a
No,
little.
we're just talking.
No, yeah.
We'll have something a little bit later.
Okay. Those of you watching on youtube.com/cover3, we do appreciate you because you're getting Bowden, you're getting at least the hint of a red Solo cup. So we got a lot to get to here. It is a Monday. It is time for Upon Further Review. We're also going to be taking a look at the new college football rankings, where there's a new number one in the AP poll. Is that the right play? What does that number one debate look like? Now we've got our Drive to 325 day trade and Danny, and of course the other pieces from our review of the weekend. But real quick, just to rifle through a few things. We left Saturday night honestly expecting that we might be having an emergency podcast on Sunday. But then I showed up for my Sunday news duty, ended up writing a lot of stories, but none of them were that Billy Napier has been fired by the University of Florida. So Billy Napier survived the weekend. And as we continue to take the temperature of exactly what the outlook is going to be for Billy Napier and this Florida Gators team, off to a 1-2 start to the season. But I'll throw this to you because I know some of the information that I've been picking up has been thanks to our partners at 24/7 Sports, right? You know, just being able to get a sense for, okay, is it going to happen? Okay, it's not going to happen today, but what does the path look like moving forward? So, Bud, what is your sense of the outlook for Billy Napier at Florida?
I don't think we need to waste time on will he be fired at this point.
No. This is let's set expectations, because I don't want to talk about Billy Napier every single episode. We left the audience with okay, we think we're going to have sirens, and yet maybe that's not our expectations right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what benefit you get from firing him now in terms of long term. Who else is really competing against you to try to hire Lane Kiffin, Drinkwitz or Jed Fish? I don't know those guys are the candidates for a job that's not even open yet, but just off the top of my dome, those would make sense in terms of guys, offensive guys, track record of scoring points, obviously some connection to the job, blah, blah, blah. We don't know who's going to make this hire. Like, do we think Scott Strickland is going to survive this? Because I don't, right? But you don't necessarily need an AD to make the firing. You probably want an AD in place to make the hire. One of the issues, though, is if you fire a guy now, it is a little tough, I think, to keep the roster together. And it's very much like open season in terms of poaching. And while Napier and his staff are incredibly disorganized from what I can see on the field, and the team has quit on him. Like I talked to some other coaches who watched that and they're like, oh man, they're like, the effort's just not there on defense. They don't care. It is a little different in terms of being able to poach their players away. And they have some nice young players on defense who other staffs are going to want to try to get. So I don't know what real benefit you get from doing it right now. And who else would be the interim? I mean, we talked about this on Sunday night. I don't think there's somebody on staff you trust to be an interim.
I do think it was interesting earlier this week, and then South Carolina nearly beat LSU. But South Carolina, their athletic director, Ray Tanner, is stepping down and making the move. And there was some speculation to you've made 2 football coaching hires. Are they going to let you make a third? Maybe that played a role in that decision. I do wonder if you're Florida, like there might be another opening in the SEC in South Carolina, depending on how things are going for the Gamecocks. Like, I don't know, like maybe Napier's not fired yet, but more along the lines of what you're saying, Bud, maybe that might have been part of that meeting that supposedly took place yesterday. Is like it wasn't so much about the coach as much as it was about the athletic director.
Also, not that I know you're not implying this. Florida doesn't compete against South Carolina for coaches.
No, but it's still going to be an SEC job that's open that you're
Sure.
competing against, or at least will drive the market and up your ante and blah, blah, blah.
And I'm not 100% sure South Carolina opens, by the way. I mean, they fought hard against LSU. If they didn't have their quarterback, they could have potentially won against LSU. I mean, the path to a bowl is there.
It's been bad. It's been ugly. I just think it's just too early in the season. And again, I thought you guys pointed out a great point about who would you elevate from within. There aren't
Dan
great options.
Enos.
Yes, but from the perspective of like what keeps the locker room together, I mean, everybody that talked to Florida this offseason was like the players liked Napier, they liked the staff. If you fire him now, I mean, it's already bad. So I guess you say like, what's the argument of how could it get much worse? But if you did want to try to get a couple wins, now's the time to at least see if they can compete, see if they can be there. As bad as it was, I just think it's too early. Like, what's the advantage of going there? Like, are you providing the spark for the team? Like, is that what you're doing? I don't think firing him, sparks the team. I think maybe playing a different quarterback would, but I just look at the timing of it. It's just too soon.
I still think it helps to get out if you're going to do it, and you can for appearance's sake to get out into the market to maybe start sending out feelers while you're not still currently employing a coach. Maybe there's an advantage there, but you mentioned Jed Fish for the job, but there's another guy I think that hasn't been mentioned nearly enough that probably should be under consideration when the job comes open. He's got plenty of head coaching experience. He's proven he can beat Florida State. His name is Ryan Silverfield, and he coaches the Memphis Tigers. That's right. Let's go Tigers. That was a big win this weekend. Let's stop distracting the world with Billy Napier talk. We know what we're here for. We want Florida State tears. Danny, cry for me.
You're gonna be broke from having to buy all the gear of teams that beat Florida State.
This is the last T-shirt I'm buying.
Joke's on you
for the rest of the season.
And also, like, do we honestly think you have to fire the coach to put out the feelers for the next one? Like, no coach is going to leave now, but you can clearly have those conversations behind closed doors. So I don't know if it's as much of a, hey, you got to fire him to start the next head coach. I just think I don't know. I think it looks even worse if you fire him now.
There's something to be said for the stadium atmosphere on a Saturday. And are fans angrier when you let the coach still be there, or when you fire him, do they check out and not show up? Or sometimes we have, especially in these big proud programs, you do make the midseason change, and I get sometimes a sense from the fans where it's like, all right, well, now let's just go support the players. And you do almost like change the tone a little bit because expectations are out the window. We know there's going to be a new coach. So then you start to change the focus to, not booing the actual players that are out there competing for the school that you love so much, and in many cases give money to. So it feels like the midseason fire, there's the locker room angle, but I think the fan base angle would be the other reason to do it, because you just don't want to create a straight up hostile environment for your own home games. Not good business, I would think. We'll see. All right. We got an update from Texas. The Quinn Ewers abdominal strain is week to week. His tummy ache. Quinn Ewers' tummy, it could keep him out against ULM. The way that I'm going to operate is that he's probably not going to play against ULM. But, week to week moving forward, the Texas quarterback conundrum, even though it's a great problem to have. How do you see this one playing out right now?
I know we all the time, we look at schedules and look at it from the perspective of the coaches like, hey, you can get him healthy while he's out there and have the opportunity to beat a lesser opponent. And you're like, let's take a break. If I'm Quinn Ewers, I'm probably going in there saying, yeah, I think I can tough it out. Like, I think I can make it through this game. At least let me start it. Like, I wouldn't want to give the opportunity to have Arch go out there again and showcase another game like that, which whoever plays quarterback against ULM probably will have. So like from that standpoint of, let me not just get flat out, Wally pipped in this situation. Let me go out there and showcase I can go. It is a really uncomfortable situation for Quinn Ewers, who has handled every bit of pressure up to this point magnificently, because it's not like Arch hasn't been breathing down his neck the entire time. But I think it's a little bit different if he starts and plays well, that you're a little bit more uncomfortable.
I'm not. Can I put on the tinfoil hat?
Yes.
I think Quinn could play if he wanted to. I think that this was a situation where you're playing UTSA. You already had the game in hand. Ow, I've got a tummy ache, a little thing. We're going to sit you down. We're going to let you rest. We've got Arch Manning. We're playing UTSA. We've got ULM next week. We talked about this. Like, part of the reason that Texas, you're glad that they have the QB depth that they do if they're looking to win a national title is because Quinn Ewers has been hurt before. He has not, he's missed games because of injury. These are not important games. Like, Bud, to go along with you, like, you're resting starters for the playoff, for the big games that matter. That's what they're doing with Quinn Ewers. They're going to bring him back when it's a big game. And if I'm Quinn, I'm not worried about Arch Manning balling out against UTSA and ULM. He hasn't gone into the big house and done it against Michigan. He hasn't gone into Tuscaloosa and done it against Alabama. I have. I'm the starter. I'm in the commercials. I'm not going to lose my job no matter how well Arch Manning plays. He's going to be there with their next big game. He will be starting. He will be fine, and they will move forward. I really like, my initial reaction to this injury was, okay, I'm not doubting he's got an injury, but it's not, if they'd have been playing Michigan and he had the injury, he wasn't leaving the game.
Fair. October 12th, by the way, is the next time that you would need him, because it's ULM, it's Mississippi State, then it's off week to get ready for Red River rivalry. And look, I don't want to litigate Oklahoma too much. We'll have time to do that in Big Game Breakdown on Wednesday, but who knows what that Sooners game is going to even look like for Texas as well. But if you are Texas, from the scheduling perspective, like, you got Michigan in the rear view, you've got a couple weeks until Oklahoma. If there's any time to be able to do it, I totally get why this would be a time not to rush him back into play. I do think Arch Manning provides something that Quinn Ewers does not. And that is when you've got running backs who are dropping left and right, and you're already down to some young but talented players who I think, they got some wiggle to them. You got the hammer in there as well. They can mix up their running looks, but to be able to add the threat of, and then the production from Arch Manning running the football, I could see a way where Arch Manning remains a piece of this offense, even as Quinn Ewers returns to be QB1.
So, like, they could put him at running back?
No, they could put it. They could put him in there as a quarterback that can offer the threat of the run. He ain't no Jaquindon Jackson, but he offers something that I think Quinn Ewers does not in that place. But what's your thought here?
I mean, I don't have any reason to think that he's not actually hurt. I haven't heard that. I mean,
No, he has an injury. It's just not a serious one.
You mean like he'll be back? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with like he could play type thing. Like that, an oblique, if you're a rotational guy, that's a pain in the ass. Or
is it an oblique or an ab strain? Because they haven't called it an oblique.
Abdominal strain is the word.
Well, an abdominal, I'm not a doctor, but an oblique is sort of one of your related abdominal muscles, right? Maybe they just call it like abdominal area.
As somebody who has a just shredded six pack, I can speak from an area of expertise on this one. So I never had it. It's like some guys, and it's not calling him soft or anything like that, but we've talked a lot about different players. Some guys get hurt more than others. Maybe their body isn't, built for the game, or they just get dinged more easily, or they feel every strain that's out there. To me, he looked like he was in pain.
Yeah.
And that does become an issue because, I mean, it is a physical sport, and it was just reaching for a handoff, right? Those strains, I mean, it's why the 49ers shut down Christian McCaffrey for a month off a calf strain, because the only thing that can really get you healthy is shutting you down and just resting it. And they'll try to do some massages and they'll try to have you stretch it lightly, but you can't go out there and just keep, fighting your way through it. So that's where I do wonder how serious is it? How does he feel? And maybe it is a truly game time decision for the staff. Like, hey, let's see how he feels on game day. And I do think that's where I was like, if I'm Quinn Ewers, I'm saying, man, can I fight through this? Can I take something? Can I fight through the pain just to start? Get out there, give it up 21-0 again. Then we'll go to Arch, just so you don't feel like you lose, any ground, any goodwill that you've got, which I think they have a really healthy quarterback room. I don't think that's the issue. I just think, and Sark did point out, like, this was great for them to get Arch some reps, even though it was a blowout, to let him play where it feels like the starter's hurt. He's down. I have to step up. And he did. I thought that was huge for Texas.
100%. We'll keep our eyes on that. Coming up on the other side, speaking of those Texas Longhorns, they have assumed the #1 position in the AP Top 25 poll. Not quite in the coaches poll, but it has opened up a discussion that we have not really had in earnest since the beginning of the season. Who deserves to be the #1 team in the country? We'll get into all that and more next. Shout out to Dogwood Maple in the tailgate. He's been pulling into his spot. He's been giving me some laughs, including the key to not having an abdominal muscle strain is you don't have any ab muscles.
That's right. I've never had any.
You don't have to worry about it. All right. On Mondays, we like to take a look at the new updated top 25 rankings in poll section. And it is Jeff Banks's Texas Longhorns that are #1 in the AP Top 25 poll. They got 35 first place votes. Georgia got 23. And then you've got 5 first place votes that are still with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Georgia remains their position at #1 in the coaches poll. And then at the CBS Sports 134 released on Monday, Texas also moved into #1. If you're curious, the average rating across the ballots of CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports experts, with Texas average ranking 1.7, Georgia average ranking 2.4, which means that at the CBS Sports 134, not everybody thinks Texas is #1, and there are some that believe that Georgia is not even #2. Of course, that would be Ohio State is in this conversation as well. Danny,
way to go. Well done. Okay. Because I've seen too many times when the AP goes with the older mindset of if you win, you hold serve, and if you lose, you get dinged, and you have to go down a certain length for actually making a move like this, which is significant, right? You're changing your mind on who is the best. I think you should also be willing to, if Georgia goes to Bama and beats them, be like, yep, boom, right back up. And if Texas looks vulnerable without Quinn Ewers, if he's potentially out, then you ding them down. If they struggle. I like the fluidity of the AP voters thinking. Like, I think this is the way it should be, where you're less rigid and you're more willing to look and see what you had. I did see some Ohio State fans, because I put out my poll and I had Texas at #1, and Ohio State fans were like, well, what about us? We've looked great and Georgia looked awful. You can't just disregard what Georgia did at Clemson. Like, there still is a resume there, but when you stack them up, how have they looked together this season? They both have a really nice win, and then one has dominated every other opponent, one has not. And it was a struggle against Kentucky, which I think is, and I also think Kirby Smart's probably secretly loving this, because it allows him to go in his team and say, look, they don't believe in you. They think you suck. And now they'll come out with, their hair on fire. So, but I appreciate the voters being willing to make that change.
It is funny how many people just kind of forgot about that whole 34-3 win over Clemson.
Right.
Because I got a lot of those arguments too. It's like, Georgia hasn't beaten any. I had tweets, Georgia hasn't beaten anybody. It's like, they beat Clemson by 31 to start the season. I know they struggled against Kentucky, and I'll have more on that later and upon further review. But I don't disagree with putting Texas #1 if you want to. It's perfectly reasonable, because Texas, I think, when beating Michigan on the road, is probably a better win than the win over Clemson at a neutral site, although time may show that the Clemson win was much more impressive. We'll see. But I am somewhat pleased to see the more of a open-minded ranking, although our colleague Adam Zucker has him at 6. I don't know if I would go that low on Georgia, but I at least get the argument for it. But yeah, I do think the AP poll is becoming a lot more reactionary than it has been in recent years.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's
in a lot of cases. In some cases,
I love how the chat hates this segment, but yet they all watch it. And like on YouTube, it hits every week. So maybe they hate watch. We appreciate it.
So the other piece of this that is really interesting to me is what is it going to take for the following teams to really enter the conversation? Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and maybe even Miami too. Because these teams are going to, like, Alabama plays Georgia. I get that. Tennessee's got a couple weeks. They've got Oklahoma. Then they've got a couple weeks before they play Alabama. Is there anything that an Ole Miss or a Miami can do? Can they collect enough momentum from a rankings perspective as they continue to stack up wins? Because I enjoy that we have a real conversation for number 1, but I also think we've got a group there in the back half of the top 10, especially with some of the schedules that they face, where they could be sitting there at like 8-0. Danny being like, well, why? Like, they'll be in the Ohio State position. Like, why not us? And it'll be something interesting to track.
Tennessee, and Chuck pointed this out in the chat. If they go to Norman, and I don't even think they have to like whoop them, but if they win, I think they have a chance to enter this conversation and leapfrog a couple teams.
Yeah, I don't think Ole Miss has a chance at all.
Yeah.
Miami and A&M are getting a lot of helium based on smoking a UF team that really looks like they have kind of quit. So I don't think that they have an additional opportunity to get more helium in the polls until they really play somebody decent. Kind of the same thing for Ole Miss and Missouri. I think if Van Dyke had stayed in for for Wisconsin, then Alabama's win over Wisconsin might be getting a little more respect. I was pretty impressed with Alabama's defensive line overall. Secondary, which was our concern about that team, I think, or at least mine, was not really tested by the backup quarterback. So I think we still have an unknown there. But if Van Dyke had stayed in for Wisconsin, I do think Bama probably gets a little more love.
Tennessee currently with the number 1 scoring offense in the country, the number 3 scoring defense for the country. The cumulative scores of Tennessee's 3 wins is 191-13. Just smashing everybody.
And that's another jump that they made, Tennessee over Mizzou. Mizzou was a little bit less than impressive against Boston College, didn't cover the spread, still won, so like who cares about it? But Tennessee, I would say their resume is better and they've looked better in blowouts and they feel more complete. So I like that another move the AP made, being willing to, even though both teams won, you bump one a little bit more than the other. I mean, it sounds to me that the AP voters, probably like Tom Fornelli, are able to be purchased with swag. And so maybe that's why they made the jump. I want some of that swag. I've been high on the Nico train. Come on.
First of all, I'm not an AP voter. Ralph Russo.
Yeah, but you're more influential on here.
Yeah, Ralph would never give votes to
Ralph
us.
would never give it to me.
He knows us too well. That's the problem.
Right.
He doesn't want those angry texts. Like, what the hell are we doing, Ralph? No, I mean, honestly, I don't have many problems with anything at the top of the poll this week. Like, because I mean, there was a week where the 2 teams that lost, the only 2 ranked teams that lost a ranked team. So it was a pretty cookie cutter kind of week. And it was, maybe that's what led to so much movement at the top, because sometimes people just feel like they need to move things around. They don't want to send in the same ballot. And that leads to Texas moving up to number 1. My bigger problem is at the bottom.
I told you Illinois would get in. You were like, but it's just Central Michigan. I was like, nah. Illinois got that momentum.
They're in over a couple teams that I believe should be ranked ahead of them.
Like Indiana?
Yes. I think that if you're looking at the Big Ten right now, they've got Nebraska at 22, Illinois at 24. Nebraska has the win over Colorado, which I guess holds some cachet in the minds of voters because they have beaten North Dakota State and Colorado State. But Indiana, to me, deserves it far more than Illinois does to this point. Because if you look at Indiana's overall schedule, they haven't played anybody, but they have absolutely smoked every single team on their schedule. They have dominated them from the first snap of the game until the end. Whereas Illinois has the win over Eastern Illinois, which whatever. Central Michigan, they crushed them. And they beat Kansas, which was a huge win for them last week. But Kansas then follows it up with a loss to UNLV. So how good is Kansas? So you mentioned, like, Danny, people just kind of, if you win, you move up. If you lose, you go down. Illinois being ranked for beating Central Michigan while Indiana is still outside the poll is very much a Illinois. Well, we had them on our ballots last week, so we'll just bump them up and put them in. I don't think they should be there.
Indiana's not even receiving votes.
They receive votes.
Are you sure? You guys?
Yeah,
oh, I
they
see it.
got
I see it.
13.
I see it. They got 13. I see it. But they're like not 26, 27. They're close to 30, right?
They
Yeah.
showed up on 1, 2, 5 ballots, none higher than 22. Because
it feels like again, we 15 through 40 is, and maybe not 15, but maybe the cutoff is like after Louisville, like 20 to 40 at this point seems very interchangeable. If you will.
It's trendy. It's like a stock report. It's like who's hot. You know, you can cycle yourself on it. I mean, from a like, not let me put my Bud pants on real quick. Like, Northern Illinois is not the 23rd best team in the country.
No, but they have an impressive win.
Right.
I mean, you could, like, if you said LSU should be somewhere between 25 and 40, I really can't get with that. Notre Dame kind of the same overall, most likely, and Michigan too, and Louisville obviously has crushed everybody. But if you wanted to say like Iowa State, Clemson, Nebraska, Northern Illinois, Illinois, A&M belong somewhere between like 20 and 40, no problem with that at all. Yeah,
you could throw Cal in there. Cal beat Auburn at Auburn. I mean, that's like a better beating Auburn at Auburn and being 3-0 is a more impressive win than smashing App State at home.
We are headed for an awesome final 10 weeks of the college football season, in large part because we have just not had the upsets that maybe we normally have in some seasons. We had this last year too, a little bit, but I mean, Nebraska's still 3-0. Illinois, Pitt's undefeated, right? Memphis is still undefeated. Cuse is still undefeated. Boise had the close game there. UNLV is still undefeated, right? BC had a reasonable game against Missouri on the road. Wazoo's still undefeated. We're going to have a whole lot of matchups coming up where both teams have a 0 in the loss column.
Yep.
And true to form with the AP poll, there has been one major upset, but the team that lost is still ranked ahead of the team that beat it.
Oh yeah.
And you've got, by the way, speaking of those Kansas Jayhawks, the pillar of Illinois' rankings profile, down 36 spots in the CBS Sports 134, now checking in at number 56. That is the land, not of the middle of the pack power conference teams. That is the land of the middle of the pack of the whole daggum FBS. So Jayhawks got a lot to figure out. Maybe we'll be taking a deeper dive on that moving forward, but
feels like a lot, right? I mean, they had a 90% post-game win expectancy against UNLV, and UNLV did kind of luck box their way to that win a bit with recovering some of those fumbles they had, and they weren't blown out by Illinois. I mean, that was a competitive game on the road against what maybe the rest of the country doesn't realize yet, but it certainly appears to be a much improved Illinois team. If you lost to last year's Illinois team, okay, that's a little different, but this team looks better. So 56 feels
drastic.
I don't know. That's a bit drastic. Yeah.
It can happen fast out there in the land between 30 and 60.
No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think UNLV though should be they have the best resume of the group of 5? They smoked
Texas.
Houston.
Oh, it was Houston. They got two.
They beat them like convincingly.
Only 2-0 team in the Big 12.
Yeah. Okay.
And Memphis's resume, like, hey, good for them. They might, but like, do you see the teams they've beaten? They're all 0-3.
Is playing Oregon to a score in Oregon more impressive to you than beating Kansas and beating Houston? Because to me, it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's a more impressive performance. Obviously, it's not a win, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Coming up on the other side, we got to open up the market. Checking in with Day Train Danny. We got to give you an update. Some of the best individual performances from the weekend that mattered the most to us by the Cover 3 Fantasy League and the drive to 325. Iowa has a monster game against Minnesota. How many points do they need to score to stay on pace for the drive to 325? We'll get into all that, plus upon further review next.
A Quiet Place Day 1 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's thrilling, terrifying. It will make your heart pound out of your chest. A Quiet Place Day 1, now streaming.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, do we have the drive to 325? Yeah. All right, bud. Let's talk us through it. How are we going? We got the race car going through the cornfield. As we mentioned, this was a big week for the Hawkeyes as they were looking to bounce back from only scoring 19 against Iowa State. So what's it looking like with a date against Minnesota coming up this weekend?
We're looking okay, man. I think they need to get about 20 here, and then Iowa is on pace to reach those 325 points. I'm excited about this. Still leaving Ohio State at 6. Washington going to need a 30 burger there. 30 at Michigan State feels kind of doable. Northwestern 24. Wisconsin 17. At UCLA 31. Doesn't feel quite as bad. Maryland 30. And then 24 Nebraska. So that Nebraska one could be difficult, and we might need to bank some of those points coming up.
Where did you shave them off, if you don't mind me? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but because
it's a personal question, Chip.
We were
Danny here to sponsor us. Yes, because 38 exceeded what we needed, right?
Yes, by 3. So I did not shave any off because there really wasn't any need to, because it's just like decimals over. So,
okay, cool.
We left it as is.
38 when you needed 35. You are just on pace. Congratulations. Yeah. You're back on pace. All right, let's go ahead and let's hit the bell with Day Train Danny.
All right, here we go. Market is open. Just a reminder, QBs that I am holding, never sold, still holding. Nico, had him. Dylan Gabriel, even after a rough start, still holding, still putting up completion percentage numbers. I am holding to my claim that he will break Bo Nix's completion percentage numbers that he put up last year for the Ducks. And I think he's on pace to be right there. Still holding Cade Klubnik. And I am holding Carson Beck as far as Heisman stock goes. One game, bad game, early enough in the season, you didn't lose. I think if you liked Carson Beck potentially to win the Heisman, now's the time to do it. I was holding Quinn Ewers. Now, I am not adding to any Carson Beck stock, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add to my Quinn Ewers Heisman stock. He is at 22-1 in FanDuel right now, 22-1. I don't know where he was last week, but I would guess it was somewhere in that top 2 or 3 spot, along with Cam Ward, somebody else. It's been dinged significantly. You know what? Did you see Arch Manning's? So I was looking at this right before the show. 25-1.
I did. I did, Danny.
Did you snatch some up? Did you happen to buy some?
I listen. As a Heisman voter, I'm not gonna,
Oh, that's right.
I'm not gonna dabble. I'm not gonna dabble in these waters like that. But
I don't think it's as serious. I think he could even miss a game statistically. He's still, now this thing that makes me nervous, where if you could buy something to protect yourself against that, then I would suggest it. But you just got to take the risk of, if he gets hurt again, then you're probably losing your money. But I do think this injury is something that he could come back from sooner rather than later. I would think, and the report's kind of outer that he's going to miss ULM, right? That's one game, get healthy, back from Mississippi State, another stat padding game. And then you get to your highlight moments games, which he already, I would say him, Cam Ward, Nico have like these Heisman performances on a national stage when everybody's watching. He's already got those. He's going to have a lot more opportunities for him when Georgia comes to town, the Red River rivalry, all these games ahead of him. So I kind of like the value of Quinn Ewers here at 22-1 from a Heisman perspective. So I'm going to add a little bit to the Heisman stock there. You know what else I'm buying?
What?
Marcel Reed is the better quarterback for Texas A&M, for the Aggies, in Colin Klein's system specifically. We've talked a lot about this. Sorry, bro. I don't know, bro. Oh, bro. I don't know. Sorry. I'm going to bench Connor Wegman. I think it's a no-brainer, especially the lack of running that we've seen, and just Reed looks more comfortable in that system. I think it brings another dimension to it, which is clearly the trend that college football and even the NFL is going to, is athletic quarterback. You can run. It just adds another dimension to the game that I think offensive coordinators want to take advantage of.
I think the way you phrase that's pretty brilliant. I mean, I don't know that I would rather have Marcel Reed than Connor Wegman in just any system, just blind. But with the A&M offensive line and with the system they want to run, I do think he's a better option for them right now. I will caveat, everybody who has played Florida has looked like a Heisman winner so far. So there is some chance that there is, like, that's related. Florida has no pass rush.
Quarterback, did he look like a Heisman? I don't know if he did.
Well, I mean, they just have no pass rush at all. So everybody stands back there for days. I mean, Cam Ward was like walking. It wouldn't have triggered his Apple Watch at times. And Marcel Reed didn't have quite that kind of little stroll to him, but he could have if he wanted. He had all day to throw. I mean, some of these third down and longs they have like a legitimate 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi count in the pocket. So, and you know what? Hey, somebody's open at that point. Of course they are. But I think it's a good take.
Speaking of quarterbacks, 2 quarterback systems, sell all of those. Just sell them now. I mean, Florida, Michigan, it truly is. The old cliche is as true as it's ever been. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. I would tell all of them to have some balls and do what Hugh Freeze did. I think that was a tough decision for Hugh Freeze to go with Hank Brown, and he did. It was hard. But Peyton Thorne's a veteran. He's a guy that started all last season. And instead of saying we're going to play both, we're going to give them both a chance, he just rolled Brown out there and he balled out because he's able to find a rhythm. I think what Napier did going every other series is the worst. Maybe the only thing worse would be rotating every play, but from
Spurrier did that, remember?
Which well, that's what
genius,
Jesse Palmer was calling the game, and he talked about that. He said, "Hey, I remember that. That was a disaster. It was one of the reasons I didn't want to go to Florida because Spurrier was so willing to interchange QBs, and he would bench you quickly if you weren't producing. Right when you get into flow of a game, let's say you have a nice drive, you go either score a touchdown or you kick a field goal, and you start feeling okay, I got some confidence. Then you got to go watch the other guy do it. It does not make any sense to me. Florida and Michigan were the 2 ones that came to mind for me. Michigan looks like they're in a world of hurt now, too, with Davis Warren struggling the way he did. And then Orji comes in, doesn't do a whole lot like we always didn't think he could do in the pass game. But because he can run, he puts up some numbers. I'm selling the 2 quarterback systems.
You know, it's funny because you mentioned something that I hadn't really hammered in quite yet, but I did feel as though at Texas A&M and at Auburn, there was a lot of buzz over the quarterback changes as though everything is fixed. And I don't know if I could do like a quick sell on just like an immediate spike, but I am going to be cautious before I'm jumping all in on Marcel Reed and Hank Brown. Like let's get halfway through conference play and let's see how these new quarterbacks look after what they did. Look, you felt like a question was answered. You felt like a weakness was addressed, and that's awesome. But I'm not ready to use them as the piece of a larger argument for how awesome the quarterback play is top to bottom in the Southeastern Conference.
I will defend Hank Brown a little bit in that low bar to clear. First of all, when you're competing with Peyton Thorne, let's be blunt. But while he wasn't spectacular in that game and he was facing a very horrible defense, the weather for a while in that game was pretty awful too. It was coming down pretty damn hard, which is never going to be a quarterback's best friend when it comes to throwing the football.
Since we're talking Michigan and their quarterbacks, I'm selling Donovan Edwards. And I'm buying Mullings.
Thank you.
Better back for that system. Yeah, Tom, you had said it before. I think he's the workhorse. I think he's the one you have to go with. Donovan Edwards might be one of those backs when everything's good. Like we've talked a lot about him having the opportunities. He's had 200-yard games before, but when we gotta work for it a little bit more, I think Mullings is the better one, the better option for them.
Yeah, when the hole is where it's supposed to be, Donovan Edwards is great.
Yeah.
When it's not, he doesn't have very good vision, I don't think. I think Mullings is a much better back.
I know our boy Michael is back in the chat, feeling good about Notre Dame. I sold Riley Leonard as the quarterback to take Notre Dame to the playoffs because of that loss against Northern Illinois. I'm selling more. I'm just give me all the Notre Dame short sale I can get. I am not going to be fooled by a dominant performance against a team that may be one of the worst in the Big Ten. I think Hudson Card was 24-25. We had to sell ourselves in that performance. By the way, Riley Leonard still 0 touchdown passes on the year. It was actually Angeli who came in, had a couple more. So I think it's a better, like, hey, I'm good for you, Notre Dame. Congrats. But I still don't think they're making the playoffs with Riley Leonard as a QB, or maybe nobody else at QB for the Irish. I think it was too devastating a loss.
Do you have an opinion on Holstein?
I do.
Okay.
I didn't have him as a buy or a sell. I want to see one more game, but I do think he's thriving in this system. Like, I kind of like what he's about, and I like the way they're utilizing him.
He's been much better than I thought he was going to be. We hit this on Saturday. I will say, if we want to look at like some leading market indicators, if you throw 8 turnover-worthy passes and only 2 have been caught for interceptions, you either need to stop throwing as many turnover-worthy passes, or you need to like be prepared for the regression monster to hit you. I mean, he threw 2 on Saturday that should have been absolute pick sixes, and were just dropped.
But digging for those stats.
I was like
hours looking for some bad stats about Eli.
I mean, that's going to catch you at some point. But I think Bell's an awesome hire at OC.
Yeah.
And Narduzzi did not have, but he got fined 5,000%. We beat West Virginia and the refs.
Well worth it.
I was watching that game live when it finished because it was an unbelievable finish. It was a great game. Backyard brawl is back. And I saw him say that. And I was like, oh, I mean, by the way, I would sell all the officiating over the weekend, because the 2 pick sixes called back for South Carolina, the Pat Narduzzi calling him out. The week before was Jum Sumrall calling out the officials in the Kansas State Tulane game. Officiating feels like it's been a little rough this year. I do think some of I thought we saw an increased protection of quarterbacks, which may or may not have been because of what happened to Tua on the national stage. And there's sort of a reemergence of that. I'm not sure if that was why, but I did have that. One more sell before the weekend, before there's a game to be played. I hate to do this because I really thought it was going to be the year of the Pack. I'm selling. I bought it 2 years in a row too, and that's where I'm upset about it. Selling Grayson McCall. I'm selling NC State as the trendy team. Again, this is a team that's beaten Clemson 2 out of the last 3 years. I think that little mini run here could come to a close.
Do we think he was hurt the whole season? I mean, Danny, you pointed this out.
Oh, like last year?
His arm strength looked like a problem in game 1 and against Tennessee.
That's why I remember my exact comment was
Bailey's not a downgrade.
Right.
No. He's just inexperienced. I mean, the hope was that Grayson McCall is going to be a bridge quarterback. The staff likes CJ Bailey, and now you're just going to have to go to him earlier. The thing that is mind-numbing for a lot of NC State fans is you feel like you've just been in this place so many times over the last 12 years where you've got somebody who's supposed to be the starter, then it's not going to work. I mean, that was Devin Leary. Devin Leary was a break glass in case of emergency quarterback that they just had to throw to the Wolves. And then Devin Leary gets hurt, and then you've got to go to the next guy. I mean, this has just been a decade of instability at the quarterback situation, except for 3 years of Ryan Finley. Coach Drink showed up with Ryan. He showed up from Boise State. He brought Ryan Finley with him. And for those 3 years, NC State had better and more consistent quarterback play outside of the 1 year of Devin Leary where he balled out. But it feels like you're just doing the same song and dance of some troubling signs early. You're going to just duct tape this thing together. The only words of, uplifting hope is that you have been here before. That Dave Doran has taken like a duct tape team, figured it out on the way, made something that looked very dreary. I mean, remember how bad things looked in the Virginia game like last year? I mean, early to mid-season last year, you're like, NC State's dead in the water. And then they go on a big run to finish the year with 9 wins. And so they could do it again. But, man, that Grayson McCall is not the answer. And this transfer portal offense has not clicked.
Dave's a good coach.
Yes.
And, I kind of worry he's like wandering into Glenn Mason territory a little bit, where fans stop appreciating how he constantly has them up against their ceiling. And the fans unjustifiably believe NC State has a higher ceiling in this when there is nothing in the program history to suggest that they do. Right? Like we just got this mailbag question on Tuesday. We don't really do in-season mailbag, but I think the question illustrates this point well. So Pack Nation 92 gave us 5 stars. So I'm going to read it on the air. Love the podcast, guys. I've got a question. Why do people think that Dave Doran is a good coach? He's sub 500 in the ACC. I checked this mainly because he had that crazy bad year to start. but he went 0-8, and then they had a bad COVID season, I think.
No,
other than that, like
the
he's been
COVID
on.
season. It was like 2019, I think. They bottomed
Okay.
out, and then 2020 they like exceeded expectations.
His
and
last
he was in the division with Florida State and Clemson. Where
his last decade has been pretty freaking good, y'all. Just to be clear. So his overall record, he's sub 500 in the ACC, and last I checked, he's 6-26 against top 25 competition. Additionally, in every big game, nationally televised game that I can remember, he embarrasses our program in blowout losses. Would love your thoughts, as I honestly wish we move on from him, as I'm tired of watching the same story every year.
All right, move on from him then.
Yeah, I would bet a lot of money that you do worse.
New NC State coach Pip Chatterson.
I think Dave Doran has NC State at like the 95th percentile of their program. If you think you can do better, cool. For every Mark Richt to Kirby Smart example, I can give you a whole lot of examples that go the other way.
You know who was complaining about their coach a week ago was Kentucky fans, and they almost beat Georgia because they got smoked by South Carolina. Similar, if you feel you could get better, good luck and go try to find it. Are we doing a? I don't even want to speak these words because I hate this segment so much. Because I remember when Florida State was awful, we used to do Knowles to go. Like, oh, we just got to touch on the Knowles a little bit from our resident Noble. Are we bringing that back, or are we just? Should we handle the Florida State discussion here? Because I do feel like we need to have it.
Eat the poop. Eat the poop.
So I am selling DJ as the starter. I got to see something different. I thought he might have done it at halftime. And you guys pointed out, like, statistically, it wasn't all on DJ's fault. What I have seen, that DJ is not the problem, but he's also not the solution. And if he's not the solution, I think it is time to give somebody else a chance to see what the offense looks like, to see if maybe somebody who's a little bit more mobile provides that spark, if maybe an offensive line, which feels like they have been absolutely exposed and struggled, injuries as well. But if it's time for them, they might feel a little bit infused more with life, that they feel like they don't have to protect for 4 and 5 and 6 seconds. And then most importantly, this thing has bothered me recently. Clearly, we see everywhere he's been, people have tried to give DJ the confidence he needs to succeed, right? Let's pump him full of confidence. Let's tell him how good he's doing. Let's look at how great he's doing in practice, and let's tell him that. I think you're seeing coaches, Mike Norvell specifically, call games to build up his confidence, to get him some completions, which I do think I would do if I was him. But if you have a quarterback who needs that much support to get his confidence going, then you don't truly have a quarterback. And like that to me is the roughest, harshest reality of where Florida State is right now with DJ. I think you got to let the other guys see what they do. I would even have DJ come into the office, sit him down and say, look, you're going to be third string this week. We're going to let the other two compete for the job. We're going to give them an opportunity. I want you to stay ready, but I also don't want to embarrass you by having to go in the game if there's an injury or something happens and you have to go back out there. I don't want to put you in that position. So you're going to get this week off. We're going to let you catch your breath. Kind of like what happened at Alabama with Jalen Milroe against South Florida when he played the other two quarterbacks last year. Neither one played great. And then they went back to Jalen Milroe and it was off to the races. If DJ sits there and watches the other quarterback struggle, I think it actually might help his confidence. Say, oh, it's not all my fault. But I just think it's come to that time where it's like, you gotta try something different. They're too hamstrung. Like they're playing too tight.
After doing the rewatch, I totally understand why they went that conservative in the first quarter. I mean, you much like we talked about with Bama and USF, like when Bama was down both their offensive tackles, they almost lost to USF and they had to put Pritchett back in the game injured to make sure they did not. Your starting right tackle missed the game. I don't know if he's going to be back this week. Your starting left tackle went down with an injury in warmups. So I think they realized, oh, we are absolutely screwed here. And they were. They had 240 yards against Memphis. So I think in the first quarter, they were just trying to throw like something that didn't require you to have both backup tackles block, right? So they will continue to be screwed regardless of quarterback if they don't get those guys back.
Danny, what's in your hand there?
So this is a red Solo cup. Now, you guys realize, Florida State is jinxed. Like there is no doubt in my mind somebody has put a jinx on this team.
Have you seen the theory that the stadium renovations accidentally hit like a burial ground?
Wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, I believe it. Like, yep. I think they're all kind of. So The guy that promised to eat the poop, he hasn't eaten it. I personally feel like I have involved in this. But there's been a lot of things that have gone wrong for me. I'm a huge Dolphins fan. I picked him to win the division. I was excited. I almost bought season tickets. Thank goodness I didn't. Tua gets hurt. The worst possible thing that could happen. But I also understand that if you go back on a bet, it's not very good. So I'm making this vow to you guys. It will not be the Solo Cup. I will not be eating that. I didn't make that bet. I will not shave. I will not shave.
Eat the poop. Eat the poop. Eat the poop.
I will not shave until Florida State wins a football game. That's my commitment.
Have
you guys done fall photos? Because it may be a minute.
Hold on, let me check.
Well, that's what I'm kind of worried about. I don't think it's a lot. But I am committed to that as long as it goes. I could, if you guys made what will come first? Florida State's first win or Bo Nix's first touchdown pass?
To me, it all depends on if they get the tackles back. If they do, I think the line against Cal is short. If they don't, then Cal should be a favorite in Tallahassee. If you recall, tackle 4, Robert Scott, tackle 3, Robert Scott's too hurt to play, and tackle 4, Harris transferred to TCU because he wanted to be able to start in his last year. So they're kind of running out like in spring what they thought would be like tackle 5 and 6, which is a major problem. So I don't want to just make it about an O-line play because there's a lot of stuff, but you can't run out 2 guys you can't block.
Looking at the schedule, we've got the woke agenda coming into Tallahassee this weekend,
which is a decent defense.
Which is a decent team.
I mean, they did beat Auburn.
They beat Auburn.
Then it's a road trip to SMU, which and then Clemson comes to town in early October. So, I mean, I feel like at Duke is the latest this will go, and that's on October 18th, but I don't know.
Is it enough to break the hex? I mean, you want me to eat the poop. There's no chance.
I think you got to eat. I mean, personally, for me, if I had given the hex, it would be eating the poop. Like, you're not just doing it for yourself and for Florida. You're doing it for Florida State fans everywhere to make up for that coward 3-2-1 Noel who made a promise he couldn't keep and then just completely ghosted from the internet. I think somebody found him, but they won't dox him, which, I mean, I'm not for doxing people. But if I was going to dox somebody, it would be the eat the poop guy, because you can't just go around doing that. There needs to be accountability in this world. My only fear is that Florida State could win this week. So I don't know. I feel like there needs to be a minimum.
Like 2 wins?
Yeah, I think we need 2 Florida State wins before Danny can shave.
I could get down with that. I need to check with my wife real quick.
I don't know. Do you?
2 wins?
Danny?
I don't know if
Need
she's
the wife's
shaking her head.
permission?
She's like, I don't know.
I was thinking on Saturday that if somebody had gone into like a cryo chamber walking out of ACC football kickoff and then been unfrozen on Saturday, and I'd showed them the landscape of that conference. Wait. What happened? Isn't Preston Stone leading the league in passing? Isn't this NC State offense looking great? Oh, and Florida State, they've got to be a top 10. No. Oh, no, not at all. No, it's like all these teams and all these storylines. Like you're just kind of like getting them all pulled down.
Agreed. It's been wild. Are you with me on giving DJ a seat? It's also at home, which it seems to me he's really like the fans are turning, they're booing. And I hate doing this because I think, I saw some pins that were out there that people were wearing saying like, bring back Brock Glenn. Like, do we remember what he looked like? I mean, it was bad in the ACC championship game, worse than what DJ is doing now. I just feel like it's almost out of mercy to DJ. You have to say, let's just see what happens if it's not you. Let's just give you a break.
So I don't really think that DJ was a bad take in the portal for what you thought you were going to be.
Exactly.
Right? Which was a team that was relying upon, they were planning to rely on the run game. I think if you had told them, hey, you're going to be down this many tackles this early in the season, they would be like, oh God, no, we can't take DJ because he's a statue and he has a long release. It's kind of like Byron Leftwich. If it was a guy you're asking to throw 18, maybe 22, 23 passes a game, heavy play action, then that makes some sense because he demonstrated he could do that last year. So Brock Glenn with the mobility, I think, is what you need to do now. It's also a bit of a business decision. So they will have people show up this weekend because it is Parents Weekend, and that place always packs out on Parents Weekend. And then you go to SMU, and then Clemson comes to town. And even though the team really sucks right now, people will probably show up for the Clemson game. And then you go to Duke, to Miami. You do kind of want to give the fans some kind of hope as far as thinking for next year. Because I'm of the opinion that I don't think Florida State fans care about making a bowl or not making a bowl, right? I think they're more like, hey, give us some hope for the future. It's FSU. You have higher goals than that. I do think in sort of the new era of college football, you can have pretty wild fluctuations year to year if you don't recruit high school at like the crazy, like Georgia, Ohio State level. But I think for like a fan standpoint, somebody probably needs to tell Norvell, like, hey, man, 4 wins, 5 wins, we don't care. You need to give people like some kind of hope or some kind of look for the future. You also need to get the evaluation right, in terms of, is this a guy you want to be your starter next year or not?
Yeah, like I said Saturday night, just for recruiting purposes, you got to get Brock Glenn out there. You have to show that you're going to get guys from the high school ranks and develop them. You can't just sit there and be like, we're going to get mercenary QBs every year and then hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, although if you're a receiver and you see a good quarterback come in, like you may want to play with them. I don't disagree.
I also, and this is kind of a different conversation, but if I was in the market for a quarterback and I was looking in the portal, I would want multiple years of eligibility. The hired gun for 1 year. We'll see how it works with Oregon. It's been a little bit of a slow start for Dylan Gabriel. Maybe he settles things down. I would want somebody that even the first year, you kind of manage those expectations of what you think you're going to be. Like, hey, this will be a develop. We might have a chance, but we're still going to develop. And then we feel like in that second year, that's when we're going to take that big step. Because we've seen a lot of guys struggle. I go back, and it's hard to learn new offenses. It's hard to learn new terminology. It's hard to get continuity with your receivers. I think that would be my mindset. If I was going to look for a quarterback, I'd want somebody with multiple years.
All right. I want to make sure I know we've got like we've got some visuals. We've got some notes. Let's make sure we go under the hood with upon further review. There were terrible calls. Do we want to go ahead and jump in?
After further review.
After further review.
After further review.
Tom, you have promised a fun fact about the Georgia offense.
Yes. We saw that dominating performance by the Bulldogs against Kentucky on Saturday night that helped drop them to number 2 in the rankings. I was just looking it over statistic-wise. In the game, Georgia had an offensive success rate of 38.2%. That is the lowest success rate they have had an offense in any game since the 44-28 loss to Florida in 2020. They had 25% in that game. The next worst was a 38.4%, so 0.2% better against Alabama in that same 2020 season. So you have to go all the way back to the COVID year to find a season in which Georgia's offense, as far as a down basis, was as terrible as it was against Kentucky. But what's even more fun to me is if you go to 2019, Georgia had 5 games with a lower success rate on offense than they had Saturday night against Kentucky, and they went 4-1 in those games. The only one they lost was against the juggernaut LSU team, which was what I think like 47-10 or something was like the final score in that game. So that was a very rare, terrible performance from the Georgia offense on Saturday night, and they still won. And I feel like that is a missed opportunity for Kentucky and for everybody else in the SEC, honestly.
Where is the level of concern for Georgia?
Low.
2.
Well,
yeah.
Kind of depends on who they get back.
Oh, the Ratledge injury could have an impact on that.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
The Ratledge injury could, or when are they going to get Michael Williams back? I mean, we're talking about pretty high level players here, and nobody has unlimited depth, especially not with the portal now. It's hard to convince guys in the portal to come be backups. So you're relying on some really young guys there. Ratledge, per the chat, I haven't checked Dogs 247 yet. Ratledge out 6 weeks per the chat.
That's a
big
problem.
Deal. Yeah, I mean they don't have. Nobody has great O-line depth, but like they need to stay healthy there.
Do you think that they have difference makers for Carson Beck to throw to?
Not on like the Missouri. Who else do we really love receiving core?
I mean, anything with Ryan.
I kind of say Ohio State because Jeremiah Smith looks like I mean,
Well, I was going to say Ryan Williams changes Alabama.
he does.
Him and Jeremy Bernard had some monster catches in the game at Wisconsin. And that's where you're like, okay, neither of these guys were there for Jalen Milroe last year. Those are places where you have a significant upgrade. Texas clearly has difference makers at the wide receiver position that I'm not sure Georgia does.
Like Bond is better than Georgia's best.
Yes.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think Carson Beck is missing his security blankets, which were Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. Like if there was a play that had to be made, third down, red zone, critical situation, those were his guys. And I think it just has yet to develop who it's going to be. And I don't think they have to be I don't think you need this dominant guy on the outside, like a Jeremiah Smith or a presence like that. It can be somebody else. I just don't think they've figured it out yet.
Yeah, based on what I was watching last year, I had higher hopes for Dylan Bell than we've seen so far coming in. I know he got banged up in the Clemson game, so maybe he's still kind of dealing with that, but he's been a bit of a disappointment for me.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Also, I don't think is this breaking?
What?
Alex Orji?
Starting quarterback?
Yep, Alex Orji will be Michigan's starting quarterback against USC.
Let's go. By the way,
I gotta bet USC.
We'll
Can we
be
hit
there.
pause so we can just go bet the under real quick?
Yeah, hold on.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, listen, USC unders have been a principle.
Yeah, well, like that
Market
just
sees
drastically
sees Lincoln Riley. That's not, the total for obviously went under in the LSU game by like 20 some odd points. And then they hung like a 61.5 for the 48-0 shutout of Utah State.
If you were Michigan and you were Sharon Moore and you were saying who gives us the best chance to win against USC specifically, guys, I just think you've seen Davis Warren get a little bit too rattled too easily.
Their receivers are just very.
And Loveland, to see what's his status, and the other, like they got some injuries. I think you got to make this sort of a fight in a phone booth where you just say we're gonna and challenge them. When LSU did, they were balanced, but they did run the ball a little bit in the second half. Remember, they were criticized too much for getting a little too conservative trying to run the football. But I do think if you're Michigan, like best chance to win is going with Orji and trying to build an offense around him and putting him some old school option concepts and saying, good luck, try to stop us.
I just made every moment more.
That's what you, yeah, exactly. That's what, or in this case, we hope the moment is less, like less points.
Yeah, less points.
So you took your entire offseason to build around Alex Orji, and then he was just so bad in fall camp that you had no other option. So your receivers don't scare anybody. We talked about this on the more Big Ten focused episode, right? I think this is a smart plan by Michigan. Doesn't mean they'll win the game, but Davis Warren doesn't look any good, and the receivers, it's not like they're getting wide open, against Arkansas State.
Did you guys get 47?
I got 46.5.
Mostly 46.5.
So they're Hard Rock with the good number out there. Let's go. All right. So we will be breaking that game down, doing a big game breakdown for USC Michigan. It is the game on CBS at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And a little note here, we will be on CBS Sports Network 12:30, a little bit of an adjusted schedule with Champions League action kicking off on the CBS family of networks and Paramount Plus. So instead of 2 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, we will be on CBS Sports Network 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, previewing the week ahead in the Big Ten, and that will include a big game breakdown. We'll have it available on our YouTube channel for on demand and wherever you get your podcast. Bud, you have a play from USF's 49-24 win against Southern Miss that caught your eye. Take us through this one.
I do. So Southern Miss got up 2 scores in this ball game. It was like 14-0, I think, and then USF came all the way back. But this was an unsuccessful play that I've never seen tried, and I don't know if anybody else has. But so USF runs the whole like veer and shoot, the stuff Baylor used to run. Tennessee runs it. Obviously, that's where their coach Alex Galesh came from, Tennessee, with Heupel. They run a fake quarterback draw fake bubble receiver pass out of like crazy wide split stack formation. This is neat. Watch this. This is from our friends at Stats Bomb, so we don't get rights issues showing this play. So the quarterback bluffs the quarterback draw with action. Then to ensure it's a lateral, right? Like it becomes a lateral because you're bluffing the quarterback draw with the step forward, which creates that distance to make sure the ball is thrown behind. And the throw was terrible, right? Like it skipped to the receiver. But this is kind of neat. I've never seen anybody run a fake QB draw, fake bubble receiver pass. I don't know. It just caught. I was watching. I always watch like trick plays, turnover worthy plays, and then explosive plays to try to figure out. And I can kind of tell line play by looking at like pressure rate and tackle for loss. I don't need to watch each one of those, as well as like kind of even it out with blitz rate, because if you're having to blitz a lot, that's probably going to increase your pressure rate, whatever. But like the stuff I actually want to watch when I review games is trick plays, turnovers, explosives to see how they got them. This was neat, even though it didn't work. Shout out USF staff. That was kind of cool.
Dude, you guys, I've noticed this more this year than maybe ever before. On some of the swing passes, it feels like they're almost being thrown backwards at more normally than usual. Because I made a living throwing the swing pass to work done, and we actually had a double pass that we hit in the Sugar Bowl against Florida. That because we threw it so many times that the defense just like, oh, here he goes, hitting outlet again, and Warwick would kind of bow out a little bit more, so it was a lateral and could take advantage of it. So, yeah, and so many people are running these bubble screens, and I've seen the bubble double pass like this, but I've not seen the quarterback draw aspect to it. That's kind of wild.
So who did USF play this week?
Southern Miss.
Okay, so they're putting that on tape for something.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're busting that out if you truly believe in it against Southern Miss.
They're down. What was the score at that point?
Oh, they were down? Okay.
Yeah, remember they got down 14.
That's right. Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, you got to really...
one, so I think they're down. Are they down? So they had scored a touchdown. They're down 14-7 at that point. Okay.
But
they do score on this drive, by the way.
You got to really trust your offensive line, your receiver's ability to block for this play to work.
Do you guys know who South Florida is playing this week?
I do.
The Miami Hurricanes at home.
I guarantee you won't see this play against Miami.
I don't know.
I
guarantee you'll have time to throw this play against Miami.
They will not run this play against Miami.
So noted ball knower Chip Patterson checks in. So if you fake the bubble, what happens? Fake the draw, fake the bubble, he's sacked. You can't block Miami for that long? Or is there something that you can build off of it?
I don't know. I mean, I would have never dreamt this up, so I don't know what they're trying to build off of it if they are. It's just that play is not going to work against Miami.
It could cause your safeties to be a little bit less downhill against quarterback draw and quarterback trap.
Right.
And the bubble. They gotta be at least a little bit worried about a trick play.
You clear the box out just a little bit to give Brown a little bit more room, that where maybe if you can get a little space, you can get out there. I mean, listen, USC is one team. Miami is another. Penn State is another. You've got a lot of these teams that spent last week off with a way early bye week that have had good starts to the season. Everybody's feeling good. I will be paying attention early in those games once they start to, start to get hit again. See how long it takes them to adjust. I know we're running a little bit long on time. Do you want to do what other sort of upon further review? Who Fluff Bothwell,
Cover 3 legend. You heard him here first.
That's true.
Fluff had a huge game on Saturday in South Alabama's 87-10 win over Northwestern State. Or actually, that was on Friday, right? Yeah, it wasn't on Saturday. But Fluff, 7 carries, 143 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's living up to your name right there. You can't just go out on the street named Fluff Bothwell without doing that to Northwestern State.
Anything else that we want to hit from the week that was? We still haven't talked about Pac-12 expansion, but I'm not feeling pressed for it. Right?
Agreed.
Okay.
I had one other thing, but we could save it.
What?
It's just a quick little fun thing about Iowa. Another stat.
Okay. Always got that.
We talk about their offense. It's time to talk about their defense. All right. Just a quick rundown. Passing plays of 50 yards or more allowed by Iowa by season. 2017, 2. 2018, 4, 2019, 6, 2020, 3, 2021, 4, 2022, 3, 2023, 2. Through 3 games in 2024, 3. They have already nearly exceeded their usual season total through the first 3 games. And fellas, it is not like Iowa is playing a bunch of juggernauts so far this season, especially when it comes to passing games. So there might be something to keep an eye on there. But also in the Big Ten, there have been 5 passing plays of 50 yards or more allowed by Big Ten defenses all season. Iowa's responsible for 3. Maryland's responsible for the other 2. None of the other 16 teams have allowed 1. So Iowa's defense is the same as Maryland's. Now, that is the point I'm trying to make.
Those juggernaut terrapins. I mean, they navigated the world of vineyard vines and braided belts, came out on the other side. What terrific resolve from the Terps. All right. Again, Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be on CBS Sports Network, getting you set for the week ahead in the Big Ten. And Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, more of our updates from around the country and a big game breakdown. Look at, among others, the Josh Heupel revenge game. Did you know that we are 10 years from Josh Heupel getting fired?
I watched that press conference this morning.
I watched that press conference yesterday.
Okay.
Because Jay Norvell, also Colorado State head coach, got fired in the same swoop. And the hire that Bob Stoops made the next offseason was Lincoln Riley. Like literally, like cosmic college football changes were made 10 years ago in Norman, Oklahoma. Bob Stoops has released a Notes app announcement that he is not taking any media requests for the week. And honestly, Bob, good for you. You play golf, you sell tequila, and you don't owe anybody anything. Okay? You do you, Coach Stoops. So we'll be back Tuesday, CBS Sports Network, 12:30 p.m. Wednesday, 11 a.m. back here on youtube.com/cover3. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Bob Stoops to Florida?